They said he's used to scraps and sent me outside to wait. Then a woman in a SUV asked for me. The invitation had been sitting on our kitchen counter for weeks, its gold-embossed lettering catching the light each morning as I made coffee. My wife Elena had been excited about her cousin Tara's engagement party for months. I'd been dreading it for just as long. "Are you sure you want me to come?" I asked again, adjusting my tie in the mirror. It was a second-hand Hugo Boss that Elena had found at a thrift shop last Christmas. "I can always say I'm not feeling well." Elena slipped her arms around my waist from behind, resting her chin on my shoulder. "Don't be silly, Alex. You're my husband. Of course I want you there." Her reflection smiled at me, but I could see the anxiety behind her eyes. She knew what was coming just as well as I did. 3 years of marriage, and every family gathering had been the same performance. The subtle digs, the condescending smiles, the offers of help that were really just opportunities to remind me how much of a failure they thought I was. "Besides," she added, grabbing her purse, "I promised Mom we'd both be there. It's important." Important. That word again. Everything her family did was important. The right schools, the right neighborhoods, the right careers. Elena had broken the mold when she married me, and her family had never let either of us forget it. The drive to her aunt's sprawling colonial in Greenwich took 40 minutes, each passing mile ratcheting up my anxiety. Luxury cars already lined the driveway when we arrived. Sleek German sedans and massive SUVs that probably cost more than what most people made in a year. "You look handsome." Elena squeezed my hand before we stepped out of our 10-year-old Honda Civic. "Just ignore them if they start. Please? For me?" I nodded, brushing my lips against her knuckles. "For you, anything." The moment we walked through the double doors, I felt it. The shift in the air. The momentary pause in conversations. The quick glances. Elena's family was holding court in the massive living room. Everyone dressed like they were attending a red carpet event, rather than a family gathering. Elena's mother spotted us first, breaking away from a cluster of relatives to air-kiss her daughter's cheeks. "Darling, you made it." She turned to me with a practiced smile that never reached her eyes. "And Alex, you found a tie. How nice." "Hi, Margaret," I said, forcing warmth into my voice. "The house looks beautiful." She nodded absently, already turning back to Elena. "Tara's been asking for you. Everyone's in the garden. The bar is open, and appetizers are circulating. Come. Come." I followed them through the house, past artwork that probably cost more than my entire college education and furniture that looked too perfect to actually use. The back garden had been transformed into something from a luxury wedding magazine. Strings of twinkling lights, flower arrangements on every surface, a small orchestra playing in the corner, and waitstaff circulating with champagne and hors d'oeuvres. "Elena!" A chorus of voices called out as we stepped onto the terrace. Relatives swarmed around her, air kisses and champagne glasses clinking. Everyone talking over each other about how gorgeous the bride-to-be looked and how perfect the party was. I stood awkwardly at the edge of the group, nodding and smiling when appropriate. No one addressed me directly. No one offered me a drink. I was furniture, something Elena had brought along that no one quite knew what to do with. "So Alex," a voice boomed beside me. Elena's uncle Richard materialized at my elbow, whiskey in hand, his face already flushed from alcohol. "Still between jobs, are you?" And there it was, less than 10 minutes in. "I'm working on a project actually," I said carefully. "A startup." Richard barked a laugh, loud enough that several heads turned our way. "A startup? Well, isn't that the fancy way of saying unemployed these days?" He clapped a meaty hand on my shoulder, squeezing just hard enough to be uncomfortable. "You know, my firm is always looking for mailroom staff, no experience necessary." I could feel heat crawling up my neck but forced a smile. "I appreciate the thought." "Leave him alone, Richard," Elena's mother said, appearing beside us. But then she leaned toward another relative and whispered, "Poor girl really settled, didn't she?" The whisper wasn't quiet enough. It wasn't meant to be. I caught Elena's eye across the garden, saw her face fall as she registered what was happening. She started making her way toward me, but was intercepted by Tara, resplendent in a designer dress, waving a diamond ring that caught the light with every gesture. "Elena, you have to see what Jason got me for our pre-wedding gift," she squealed, pulling my wife toward a group of cooing women. I found myself alone again, drifting to the edge of the party. A waiter passed by with champagne, and I reached for a glass, only to have Elena's Aunt Diane intercept my hand. "Oh, Alex," she said with a tight smile. "That's the Moët. We have some Pinot Grigio at the sidebar for the… well, you know." She patted my arm condescendingly. Budget conscious. I withdrew my hand, embarrassment burning in my chest. "Of course, thanks for the heads up." As I retreated to find this supposed sidebar, I overheard snippets of conversation. "Don't know what she sees in him. No ambition, just these ideas he keeps talking about. Living in that tiny apartment when she could have had David Porter, who just made partner." The sidebar turned out to be a folding table near the kitchen entrance, where a bored-looking server was pouring wine into plastic cups. I accepted one with a nod of thanks and downed half of it in one swallow. "Guess you needed that," observed a voice beside me. It was Elena's cousin Mark, the only member of her family who had ever been decent to me. "They're in rare form tonight." I shrugged. "Special occasion. They're pulling out all the stops." Mark grimaced. "Sorry, man. For what it's worth, I think what you're doing is cool. Takes guts to build something from scratch." Before I could thank him, a bell rang, signaling dinner. The guests began migrating toward a massive tent set up on the lawn, where elegant tables with name cards awaited. Elena appeared at my side, slipping her arm through mine. "Are you okay?" she whispered. "I'm fine," I lied, giving her arm a squeeze. "It's just the usual." But as we approached the tent, I noticed something odd. Elena frowned, scanning the tables. "That's strange. I don't see your name anywhere." Elena's Aunt Diane swept up behind us, glass in hand. "Oh, Elena. Darling, you're at the family table with Tara, front and center." She glanced at me with a thin smile. "We had a bit of a seating issue. The caterers miscounted." "Then where's Alex sitting?" Elena asked, her voice taking on an edge I rarely heard. Diane waved a bejeweled hand toward the side of the house. "We've set up a lovely area by the kitchen garden for the drivers and household staff. It's quite nice, actually." She lowered her voice conspiratorially. "He's used to scraps anyway, isn't he? It's not like he contributes much to your lifestyle." Elena gasped. "Aunt Diane, It's fine," I interrupted, embarrassment curdling into anger in my gut. "Really, Elena? Go sit with your family. I'll be But you are my family," she protested, eyes shining with unshed tears. "Go," I insisted, kissing her cheek quickly. "It's Tara's night, don't make a scene. I'll be right outside." I could see the conflict in her face, the desire to stand up for me warring with her lifelong conditioning to keep the peace, to maintain appearances, to not embarrass the family. In the end, conditioning won. She squeezed my hand once, then let go. "I'll come check on you," she promised, her voice small. I nodded and turned away, walking past the glittering tables and champagne towers, past the orchestra and flower arrangements, to the modest set of folding tables near the staff entrance. 3 drivers in uniforms and 2 housekeepers on break glanced up as I approached, surprise evident on their faces. "Sir?" one of the drivers asked, half rising. "Can I help you?" I shook my head, forcing a smile. "Apparently I'm joining you guys tonight. I'm Alex. Elena's husband." Recognition dawned, followed by sympathy. One of the housekeepers, an older woman with kind eyes, pulled out a chair for me. "I'm Maria." "That's a shame, sir." "Their loss, our gain?" "Yep." I sat down, accepting a paper cup of water and a plate of food that didn't match the elegant appetizers being served inside. "Thanks, Maria." As laughter and music drifted from the tent, I sat among the staff, trying to maintain some dignity. I made conversation, asked about their families, their lives. They were gracious, but I could feel their pity, and somehow that was worse than the family's contempt. Night was falling, fairy lights coming on around the garden, when I excused myself to get some air. I walked to the edge of the property, away from the noise and lights, and took out my phone. I had an email to check, an important one that I'd been avoiding all day. But before I could open it, I heard something that made me look up. A sleek black SUV, with tinted windows, was pulling up to the service entrance, moving slowly, purposefully. It wasn't like the other luxury vehicles parked out front. There was something official about it, something that commanded attention. The party seemed to pause as the SUV came to a stop. Even from where I stood, I could feel a shift in the atmosphere, a collective holding of breath. And then the rear door opened, and a woman in an impeccable suit stepped out. She surveyed the gathering, eyes scanning the crowd until they landed on me. "Excuse me," she called, her voice clear and professional. "I'm looking for Alexander Chan." Every head turned in my direction, and in that moment, standing in the shadows of a party where I didn't belong, I felt something shift. The universe, perhaps, finally deciding to balance its scales. I still remember the day I decided to keep my dreams to myself. It was 6 months after Elena and I got married, during a Sunday brunch at her parents' house. I'd made the mistake of mentioning my idea for an AI-powered logistics platform that could revolutionize supply chain management. "That sounds interesting," Elena's father had said, exchanging glances with her mother. "But shouldn't you focus on finding a real job first? Something stable?" After that day, I stopped sharing. Not with her family, not with friends. And eventually, not even with Elena. It wasn't that I didn't trust her, it was superstition, perhaps. I'd seen too many entrepreneurs talk big and fail bigger. I wanted results before promises. Every morning, I'd kiss Elena goodbye as she left for her corporate job. She thought I was still freelancing, picking up odd web development gigs to make ends meet. In reality, I was pouring every waking hour into my startup, leveraging my savings and living off ramen noodles when Elena worked late. My small team and I worked remotely, our virtual meetings often stretching past midnight. We'd secured early-stage funding from a venture capital firm that saw potential in our algorithm, the kind of potential that made them willing to bet millions. But to Elena's family, I was just a deadbeat. A burden their daughter had inexplicably saddled herself with. "Alex, right?" Tara's fiancé Jason sidled up next to me as I stood alone outside. The drivers had gone back to their cars, and I was nursing a lukewarm beer someone had begrudgingly brought me. "Elena's husband." The pause before husband said everything. "That's me," I replied, forcing a smile. Jason wore the smug expression of someone who'd never doubted his place in the world. His watch alone probably cost more than my entire wardrobe. "So," he said, taking a swig from his champagne flute, "you still doing that internet hobby or whatever?" Elena's mom mentioned something about websites? I bit back a retort. "Something like that. Well, hey, if you ever need a real gig, I know some guys in commercial real estate. Entry-level stuff, but it's honest work." He clapped me on the shoulder. "You know, to actually contribute to your household." The implications stung more than I cared to admit. Elena and I split our expenses fairly. She paid more for rent, I covered utilities and groceries. We made it work, but in their eyes, I would always be the freeloader. "I appreciate the offer," I said, the lie bitter on my tongue. Jason nodded, already bored with our conversation. "Sure, man. Think about it." He gestured toward the tent. "I should get back. Tara's doing some speech thing." As he walked away, I heard him mutter to someone, "Poor Elena. Can you imagine coming home to that every day?" I'd grown used to these comments, but they never hurt less. Last Christmas, Elena's brother had given me a book titled Finding Your Career Path in front of the entire family. On my birthday, her mother had presented me with a gift certificate for resume services. The night before Tara's engagement party, I'd stayed up until 3 a.m. finalizing details for our company's IPO filing. My co-founder and our legal team had been working around the clock. After 3 years of development, testing, and building client relationships in stealth mode, we were finally ready to go public. The valuation numbers made my head spin. If everything went according to plan, my stake in the company would be worth tens of millions overnight. But as I stood there in the gathering darkness, outside a party where I wasn't welcome, those millions felt abstract. A fantasy compared to the very real disdain surrounding me. My phone vibrated in my pocket, a text from my co-founder. "Everything's set for tomorrow. You ready to be rich, you secretive bastard?" I smiled faintly, typing back, "Ready as I'll ever be." The truth was, I didn't care about the money itself. What I wanted was validation. Respect, to never again have to see that look of embarrassed pity in Elena's eyes when her family tore me down and she didn't know how to defend me. I slipped my phone back into my pocket just as Elena emerged from the tent, looking around anxiously until she spotted me. "There you are," she said, hurrying over. "I'm so sorry, Alex, this is awful. Let's just go home." I shook my head. "It's your cousin's engagement, you should stay. They're being horrible to you. Worse than usual." "I'm used to it," I said with a shrug that I hoped looked more casual than it felt. She took my hands in hers, her eyes searching my face. "You shouldn't have to be. I don't know why I keep hoping they'll see what I see in you." I kissed her forehead gently. "And what's that?" "Everything," she whispered. "Everything that matters." For a moment I almost told her. About the startup, the IPO, all of it. But then I heard Tara calling Elena's name from the tent, her voice sharp with impatience. "Go," I said. "I'm fine out here." "Really?" Reluctantly, Elena returned to the party, throwing apologetic glances over her shoulder. I turned back toward the darkness, watching the driveway where cars occasionally arrived with late guests. That's when I saw the black SUV approaching, moving slowly up the circular drive, its headlights cutting through the evening mist. The black SUV rolled to a stop precisely 10 feet from where I stood. Unlike the chauffeur-driven cars that had been arriving all evening, this one had an unmistakable air of purpose. Not luxury for luxury's sake, but luxury as a byproduct of importance. The garden party continued behind me, the chatter and laughter creating a surreal soundtrack to what felt like a pivotal moment. I straightened my posture instinctively, suddenly aware of my rumpled suit and the paper cup still clutched in my hand. The rear door swung open, and a woman emerged. She was perhaps in her mid-40s, with a sleek silver bob and a charcoal suit that spoke of boardrooms and seven-figure deals. She surveyed the scene with the calculating gaze of someone accustomed to assessing situations quickly, her eyes moving from the lavish party to the service area where I stood, somewhat apart from everything. Our eyes met, and something like recognition flickered across her face. She reached back into the car and retrieved a slim leather portfolio. "Excuse me," she called out, her voice cutting through the ambient noise with practiced authority. "I'm looking for Alexander Chen?" The effect was immediate. Like a ripple in still water, heads began to turn. Conversations paused. The small orchestra hit a dissonant note before recovering. I saw Elena's mother freeze mid-gesture, champagne glass suspended in air. My heart hammered against my ribs. This was Vivian Hayes, our lead counsel, and the architect of our IPO strategy. We'd only met in person twice, both times in the sterile conference rooms of her Manhattan law firm. What was she doing here? Tonight of all night? "That's me," I answered, stepping forward. My voice sounded steadier than I felt. Vivian strode toward me, her heels clicking purposefully on the stone path. Behind her, I noticed a second figure emerging from the SUV. Daniel Kwan, my co-founder and CTO. The party had gone eerily quiet. From the corner of my eye I could see Elena making her way through the stunned guests, confusion written across her face. Tara and her fiancé stood at the edge of the tent, whispering behind their hands. "Alex," Vivian said as she reached me, extending her hand formally despite the many Zoom calls and emails we'd exchanged. "Sorry to interrupt your evening." I shook her hand, aware of dozens of eyes on us. "Is everything okay?" A smile broke across her typically serious face. "Everything is exceptional." She handed me the portfolio. "It's done. We went public this morning." The words hit me like a physical force. My fingers fumbled with the clasp of the portfolio. The SEC approved the accelerated timeline, Daniel added, joining us with a barely suppressed grin. The opening bell was, well, better than our most optimistic projections. Inside the portfolio was a single sheet of paper, a printout of our stock's performance. The numbers swam before my eyes, impossible and yet undeniable. As of the market close an hour ago, Vivian continued, her voice carrying clearly in the hushed garden, "Your stake is worth approximately $38 million. The paper cup slipped from my fingers, landing soundlessly on the grass. 38 million. The number echoed in my head, abstract and yet world-altering. My voice failed me. Daniel laughed, clapping me on the shoulder. "Speechless? That's a first." He glanced around at the opulent party setting. "Sorry to crash your family thing, but we couldn't wait to tell you in person." The team is celebrating downtown. We have champagne. The real stuff. Not that supermarket swill and the mayor's office called. They want to feature us in their New York innovation campaign. Vivian was watching me closely. You okay, Alex? I nodded, finding my voice at last. I'm good, just processing. Processing what? Elena had reached us. Her expression a mix of confusion and concern. Alex, what's going on? Who are these people? Before I could answer, Elena's mother materialized at her side, her social smile firmly in place despite the bewilderment in her eyes. Elena, darling, aren't you going to introduce us to your husband's friends? The emphasis on the last word made it clear she was struggling to categorize the well-dressed professionals who had disrupted her niece's engagement party. Vivian extended her hand. Vivian Hayes, Chief Legal Officer for SyncLogic Technologies. Her gaze was coolly assessing. And you are? Margaret Davies, Elena's mother replied automatically, accepting the handshake. I'm Elena's mother. She glanced between us, her social training kicking in despite her confusion. How do you know Alex? I'm his lawyer. Vivian answered matter-of-factly, and this is Daniel Kwan, his business partner. Business partner? Margaret repeated. The words clearly not computing. Daniel nodded, not bothering to hide his amusement at the situation. Co-founder, actually. Though Alex here is the majority shareholder and CEO. A crowd had gathered around us now, Elena's father, Tara, and Jason, assorted aunts and uncles, all straining to hear the conversation. CEO? Elena whispered, turning to me with wide eyes. Alex, what are they talking about? I met her gaze, seeing the questions, the hurt at being kept in the dark. I was going to tell you tomorrow, I said softly. After it was official, I didn't want to jinx it. Tell me what, she pressed. I took a deep breath, aware of the audience hanging on every word. SyncLogic, my startup. We just went public today. I swallowed hard. Successfully. How successfully? Jason asked, pushing forward, his expression caught between skepticism and dawning realization. Vivian answered for me, her voice ringing clear in the night air. Mr. Chen's personal stake in the company is currently valued at $38 million. Give or take a few $100,000, depending on after-hours trading. The silence that followed was absolute. In the suspended moment of silence that followed Vivian's announcement, I had the strange sensation of time slowing down. It gave me the chance to truly see each face in the stunned crowd surrounding us. Margaret. My mother-in-law had gone pale beneath her carefully applied blush. Her lips parted slightly, the champagne flute in her hand tilting dangerously to one side. Forgotten. Beside her, Elena's father's jaw had quite literally dropped, his usual expression of mild contempt replaced by something that looked remarkably like fear. Tara, who just last week had posted a reel on Instagram mocking broke boyfriends who bring nothing to the table, stood frozen, her immaculate makeup unable to hide the rapid calculations happening behind her eyes. I'd seen that reel. Elena had tried to hide her phone when I walked into the room, but not before I caught Tara's voice saying, "Ladies, if he can't afford to take you to dinner, why are you letting him eat it all?" followed by her trademark tinkling laugh. Jason, who'd offered me an entry-level position less than an hour ago, was swallowing repeatedly, his Adam's apple bobbing up and down like a fishing lure. His eyes darted between me and Daniel, as if trying to piece together a puzzle with too many missing parts. Uncle Richard, who'd always called me the charity case at family gatherings, had turned an interesting shade of crimson. His hand tightened around his whiskey glass so severely I half expected it to shatter. And then there was Elena, my Elena, whose expression held no calculation, no fear, no avarice. Only shock, confusion, and something else I couldn't quite identify. Hurt, perhaps. The realization that I'd kept something so significant from her for so long. 38 million? Tara's voice broke the silence, high and thin. That's not possible. Daniel raised an eyebrow. We have the paperwork right here if you'd like to verify. He tapped the portfolio in my hands. Though I don't see why Alex's net worth is any of your business. Because he's family, Margaret suddenly declared, stepping forward with arms outstretched. The transformation was remarkable, her face now arranged in an expression of warm welcome, as if she'd been my champion all along. Alex, darling, You must be exhausted after such a momentous day. Come inside, sit with us. You shouldn't be out here in the dark. Yes, Alina's Aunt Diane chimed in, the same woman who'd sent me to eat with the drivers. You must be tired, come eat with us. I'll have them bring out a proper plate for you. I felt a strange calm settle over me. The situation was so absurd, so perfectly illustrative of everything I'd endured from these people for years, that I couldn't even feel angry. There was a certain purity to their naked reversal, a kind of honesty in their complete lack of shame. I turned to Alina, searching her face. I'm sorry I didn't tell you, I said quietly, for her ears only. I wanted it to be real first. She nodded slowly, her eyes still wide. We'll talk about this later. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was understanding. That was enough for now. I turned back to Margaret, who was still standing with her arms awkwardly extended, her smile growing strained at the edges. I allowed myself a small, calm smile. I'm used to scraps, remember? I said softly, but loudly enough for those nearby to hear. The words hung in the air, a gentle but unmistakable reminder of what had transpired just hours ago. Margaret's smile faltered. Diane took a half step back. Several pairs of eyes dropped to the ground. Alex, Vivian interjected smoothly. Professional as ever despite the tension, the team is waiting to celebrate. We have a reservation at the summit in 30 minutes. She checked her watch. The mayor and several investors will be joining us. The mayor? Richard echoed weakly. I nodded to Vivian, then turned to Elena. Would you like to come? It's your victory too, even if you didn't know it. Elena hesitated, glancing between me and her family. I could see the conflict on her face. The pull of obligation versus the desire to support me in what was clearly a defining moment. Go, her father said suddenly, surprising everyone. It's your husband's big night. The words seemed to cost him something, but they were genuine. Elena squeezed her father's arm gratefully, then took my hand. I'd love to come. As we turned to leave, Jason stepped forward, hand extended. Congratulations, man. Really impressive. The naked ambition in his eyes contradicted his casual tone. Maybe we could grab coffee sometime, talk business. I regarded his outstretched hand for a moment, then shook it briefly. Maybe, I replied, knowing I would never call. Tara pushed forward. Suddenly all smiles. Alex, this is amazing. I always knew you were working on something special. The blatant lie hung in the air between us. Did you? I asked mildly. That's not how I remember it. Her smile faltered but didn't disappear entirely. Well, celebrations all around tonight, right? Your IPO, my engagement? Indeed, I agreed, my voice neutral. Congratulations again. As we walked toward the SUV, Elena's mother called after us. Alex, will we see you at Sunday brunch this weekend? I paused, turning back to face the gathering one last time. The entire family stood there, illuminated by fairy lights, their expressions a study in regret and calculation. I'm afraid I'll be tied up with meetings for the foreseeable future, I replied politely. But thank you for the invitation. With that, I helped Elena into the waiting car, nodded to Daniel and Vivian, and stepped in after them, leaving behind a crowd stunned into silence for the second time that night. 1 week after the engagement party, I stepped out of the elevator into SyncLogic's new offices in Midtown Manhattan. The space still smelled of fresh paint and new carpet, floor-to-ceiling windows offering spectacular views of the city skyline. Our logo, a stylized S with a digital pulse line running through it, dominated the reception area in brushed steel. The IPO celebration the previous night had run late. We'd rented out the rooftop of a trendy hotel, the entire team plus investors drinking champagne and watching the city lights while a DJ played. Alina had been by my side the entire time, fielding congratulations from people who'd known about my secret life longer than she had. Are you still mad? I'd asked her as we stood alone by the railing. She'd taken a sip of champagne before answering. I understand why you didn't tell me. I just wish you had trusted me more. It wasn't about trust. I'd explained, it was superstition. Fear. I didn't want to promise something I couldn't deliver. She'd nodded, her eyes reflecting the city lights. Just don't keep any more multi-million-dollar secrets, okay? The memory brought a smile to my face as I greeted the receptionist. Jen, who'd been with us since we worked out of that tiny co-working space in Brooklyn. and headed toward my new office. Several team members called out congratulations as I passed. The energy in the office was electric. Success had that effect. I was halfway to my office when I spotted Mia Chen, our HR director, giving someone a tour of the space. Standard procedure for new hires on their first day. We'd been ramping up staffing since securing our Series C funding 6 months ago, with plans to double our headcount by year-end. Something about the new hire seemed familiar. The set of her shoulders, the carefully highlighted hair. When they turned the corner and I saw her face, Tara. She saw me at the same moment, her practiced smile giving way to open-mouthed shock. Her eyes darted from me to the nameplates on the offices, to the employees nodding respectfully in my direction, then back to me. "Alex, good morning," Mia said cheerfully, seemingly oblivious to the sudden tension. "I'm just showing our new marketing coordinator around. This is Tara Davies," I supplied, my voice calm. "My wife's cousin. We're already acquainted." Tara seemed to have lost the ability to speak. Her complexion had gone from carefully bronzed to ashen in seconds. "First day?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. She nodded, still apparently unable to form words. "I didn't realize you were interested in tech marketing," I continued, keeping my tone conversational. "Last I heard, you were working for your father's real estate firm." Mia glanced between us, finally sensing the undercurrent. "Tara has an impressive resume," she offered diplomatically. "Experience in luxury property marketing, strong social media presence, just what our team was looking for." I nodded slowly. "Interesting timing. I applied before," Tara finally managed, her voice thin. Before your party. I had no idea this was your company." I studied her face, weighing the probability of this being true. SyncLogic had been operating under the radar for years, but our name had been in the financial press for months as rumors of our IPO circulated. Anyone who'd bothered to Google me would have made the connection. "Remarkable coincidence," I said, not bothering to hide my skepticism. "And your fiancé? Is he joining us too?" Tara's flush deepened. "Jason, he applied for the business development position," she admitted. "But he hasn't heard back yet." "And he won't," I said quietly. "His application was rejected yesterday." I could almost see the calculations behind her eyes, whether to defend Jason, whether to quit on the spot, whether she could survive reporting indirectly to the man her family had treated like garbage for years. "I understand if you want to withdraw your application," I added, giving her an easy out. Pride warred with practicality on her face. "No," she said finally. "I want this job. I'm qualified for this job." I considered her for a moment. The marketing role was legitimate, and according to Mia, Tara had made it through the interview process on merit. Firing her out of spite would make me no better than her family had been to me. "You'll be on the marketing team," I said eventually. "Right under me in the organizational structure. Every campaign, every post, every press release crosses my desk for final approval." I let that sink in. "Do you still want the position?" Tara swallowed visibly, then straightened her shoulders. "Yes." "Good." I nodded to Mia. "Carry on with the tour. I expect everyone at the 11 a.m. product meeting, including new hires." As I turned to continue to my office, Tara called after me. "Alex?" I paused, looking back at her. "Does Elena know I'm working here now?" I allowed myself a small smile. "Not yet. I thought I'd surprise her. She'll be attending the company dinner on Friday as my official +1. I'm sure she'll be delighted to see a familiar face." The color drained from Tara's face again as she processed the implications. Working under me was one thing. Facing Elena, who had witnessed her mockery for years, was clearly another. "We're all about fresh starts here at SyncLogic," I added. My voice deliberately light, second chances, meritocracy. "I'm sure you'll fit right in, if you're willing to work for it." I continued to my office, closing the door behind me. Through the glass walls I could see Mia resuming the tour, Tara following with considerably less enthusiasm than before. My assistant appeared with my morning coffee and the day's schedule. "Your 9:30 is here," she informed me, "and the Times reporter will be calling at 10 for that profile piece." I nodded, settling behind my desk. "Thanks, Alicia. And if Jason Porter calls again, please tell him the position has been filled." "Of course, Mr. Chen," she replied with a knowing smile. Will do. 3 months after our IPO, life had settled into a new rhythm. SyncLogic had expanded to 2 additional floors in our building, and my days were filled with investor meetings, strategy sessions, and press interviews. The company that had once been my secret obsession was now the fastest growing tech startup in New York, with our AI logistics platform being implemented by Fortune 500 companies worldwide. Tara was still with us, surprisingly. I'd half expected her to quit after the first week, but she'd proven resilient. She arrived early, stayed late, and actually had a decent eye for marketing. I never made her fetch coffee or perform menial tasks that would have been beneath both of us. Instead, I simply held her to the same exacting standards I demanded from everyone on the team. Every presentation she gave, I questioned thoroughly. Every proposal she submitted, I scrutinized for flaws. Not out of spite, but because excellence was what built SyncLogic, and I wouldn't compromise that for anyone, especially not family. "You're harder on her than anyone else," Elena observed one night as we relaxed in our new penthouse apartment. We hadn't moved immediately after the IPO, that felt too reactive. But when the perfect space opened up 6 weeks later, we'd made the leap. "Am I?" I asked, swirling the whiskey in my glass, single malt now, not the cheap blend I used to nurse through Elena's family gatherings. "You know you are," she replied with a knowing smile. "But she's better for it. She actually mentioned it at lunch last week." That had been an unexpected development. Elena and Tara occasionally meeting for lunch. "What did she say?" "That she's learning more from you than she did in 4 years of college." Elena curled her legs under her on the sofa. "She also apologized for everything." I raised an eyebrow. "Really? That doesn't sound like Tara. People change when their circumstances change." Elena's gaze was thoughtful. "Sometimes for the better, sometimes not. Speaking of which, my parents called again. They want us over for dinner." I sighed. Since the night of the engagement party, Margaret and William Davies had transformed from my harshest critics to my most enthusiastic supporters. They called weekly, sent gifts to the office, and mentioned me to everyone in their social circle. "The funny thing is," I said, setting down my glass, "I still wear the same shoes, drive the same car. I'm still the same person they couldn't stand having at their dinner table." Elena nodded. "That's what makes it so transparent." I'd been approached by investors, congratulated by strangers, invited to exclusive events, all because of a number in my bank account. It was both illuminating and depressing to see how quickly perceptions changed based on financial status alone. "I'm thinking about starting a foundation," I said suddenly, "for first-generation entrepreneurs from disadvantaged backgrounds. Seed funding, mentorship, the works." Elena's face lit up. "That's a wonderful idea. You could make a real difference. Maybe your parents would like to contribute." I added with a wry smile, "Since they're so supportive these days." She laughed, but then her expression grew serious. "Are you happy, Alex? Really happy?" I considered the question carefully. The vindication I'd felt watching her family's faces that night had been sweet, but ultimately hollow. The satisfaction of seeing Tara work under my supervision had faded into something more complex. Not quite forgiveness, but understanding. Money had changed how the world saw me, but it hadn't changed who I was inside. "I'm happy with what we built," I answered honestly. "The company, our life together. I'm happy you stuck with me when everyone said you shouldn't." She moved closer, resting her head on my shoulder. "They were wrong about you. I never was." The next morning, I made a detour on my way to the office. The old apartment building where Elena and I had started our life together was in a modest neighborhood, far from our new penthouse. I parked my still not upgraded Honda Civic at the curb, and walked to the small coffee shop on the corner where I'd spent countless hours coding in those early days, nursing a single cup for hours because that was all I could afford. "Mr. Chen," the owner, Fareed, greeted me with a wide smile. "The usual?" "The usual," I confirmed, sliding onto my old stool by the window. As Fareed prepared my coffee, I watched the morning commuters hurrying past, ordinary people living ordinary lives, just as I had been not so long ago. The world looked different from this side of success, but these streets, these people still felt like home. "Your wife called ahead," Fareed said, placing my coffee before me. "Paid for everyone's drinks today. Said it was an anniversary." I smiled, checking the date on my watch. Exactly 4 years since I'd first sketched the concept for sync logic on a napkin in this very cafe. My phone buzzed with a message from Elena. Remember where you started. I was proud of you even then. As I sipped my coffee, I thought about the strange journey that had brought me here. The humiliation of being sent outside to eat with the drivers. The quiet struggle of building something while everyone around me assumed I was failing. The moment when everything changed with the arrival of that black SUV. Funny how money flips everything. How it transforms contempt into admiration overnight. But I hadn't changed. I still wore the same shoes, still drove the same car, still nursed the same coffee in the same corner cafe. What changed was they finally saw me, and I would never forget the day they sent me out with the drivers. Only for Karma to pull up in a black SUV,